You know that feeling when you're in the middle of a chat with a friend or a coworker and suddenly there's just a pause? It's that awkward silence that somehow feels incredibly, almost deafeningly loud. I mean, we've all been there, right? Usually we just brush it off as a simple social faux pas, a quick moment of embarrassment. But what if we actually looked at that silence totally differently? What if instead of it being just a social failure, it was literally a mechanical breakdown? A breakdown in this highly structured, totally invisible machinery that actually governs every single word we say.
Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're popping open the Investigator's Toolkit for Conversation Analysis in Applied Linguistics. We're basing this whole forensic deep dive on an amazing overview from Workshop 1 at the recent ALAA conference. That's the Applied Linguistics Association of Australia, led by Professor Karsten Rover from the University of Melbourne. He is an absolute expert in exactly how our daily interactions are built from the ground up, and we are going to break all of that down visually for you today. Seriously, by the time we're done here, you will absolutely never look at a casual chat the same way again.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our map for today. First, the mechanics of talk. Second, the core analytical question. Third, achieving mutual understanding. Fourth, navigating social harmony. Fifth, CA in applied linguistics. And finally, number 6, strategies for CA research. Let's just dive right in.
Section 1. The Mechanics of Talk. Tracing the Unexpected Sociological Roots. Now, to really get a handle on this field, we have to rewind a bit to the early 1960s. You'd probably expect something called conversation analysis, or CA for short, to be born in a linguistics department, right? Well, it was actually founded by a sociologist, a guy named Harvey Sachs. And we really need to look at conversation from his strictly empirical, highly structured point of view. See, Sachs didn't just look at talk as some messy, random exchange of words. Not at all. He saw it as a literal, structured machinery. He believed that by looking incredibly closely at how people converse, we can actually see our shared social norms happening right there in action. It's a radically empirical approach, really. CA builds from the bottom up, using the raw, actual data of recorded human voices, rather than starting with some grand, top-down theoretical idea.
Section 2. The core analytical question. Leaving the mind behind. So the methodology here is incredibly rigorous. CA researchers have this very strict rule. They never, ever try to be mind readers. Their absolute central driving maxim is simply this: why that now? When these analysts are looking at a transcript, they aren't sitting there speculating, oh, I wonder what the speaker was feeling right here, or what were they secretly planning to do? Because, let's be real, we simply cannot look inside people's heads. Instead, the focus is 100% entirely on the data. What does this specific social action actually accomplish in this exact moment? We observe the action, say a greeting or a request, and we just see how the other person responds to it. We are strictly observing the observable. Section 3. Achieving mutual understanding. The mechanical tools of conversation.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the big question it asks. How do two people actually manage to understand each other? The technical term for this is intersubjectivity, which is just the mutual understanding achieved by interlocutors. And look, it's not telepathy, right? It's maintained through very specific linguistic and sequential means. It is all about the formatting of our social actions and the exact sequence in which we organize our turn speaking. It's this shared state that we are constantly building and negotiating together, literally, line by line, turn by turn.
Let's actually look at the shapes these conversations take. Over on the left, we have what's called a strong adjacency pair. This is like a greeting followed immediately by a greeting. Hi gets a hi. It's a very tight mechanical link. But on the right, we've got a weak adjacency pair, like maybe a simple passing statement that is just met with total silence. So adjacency actually exists on a continuum. In a strong pair, that first part essentially demands a second part. If someone walks up to you and says, "How are you?" and you just stare at them and say absolutely nothing, wow. That missing second part creates a highly accountable, incredibly loud silence. The machinery just halts. And it feels so awkward precisely because a fundamental mechanical rule of talk was just broken.
So what actually happens when that machinery breaks down? Well, we use something called repair. And this functions essentially as an emergency brake in a conversation. It literally halts all conversational progress. It's often self-initiated, with just a little hesitation, like someone starting to say "purr" and then cutting themselves off to say, little problem, while they desperately search for the right word. Or maybe it's used to clarify a misunderstanding, like stopping everything to figure out if we are talking about Mr. Williams or Leo. The big takeaway here is that before the conversation can take even one single step forward, both parties absolutely must engage the repair to get back on the exact same page.
Section 4. Navigating social harmony. When grammar becomes a social resource. And this brilliantly illustrates just how much effort we put into being agreeable. On the left side here, we have preferred responses, like accepting an invitation or answering a really simple question. These are fast, they're direct, and they're what analysts call latched, which just means they happen almost immediately with zero gap. We rapidly say sure to align with others. But on the right, look at the dispreferred responses, like refusing a request or making a complaint. These are delayed, they're mitigated, hesitant, and full of all these extra explanations. We say things like, well, I'd really love to, but... We unconsciously use this really complex, delayed grammatical structure just to cushion the blow and protect our social harmony. Literally, grammar itself becomes a tool for empathy.
Section 5. CA and Applied Linguistics. Taking the toolkit into the wild.
So let's see how Professor Rover connects all these foundational mechanics to the actual, modern, real-world problems we're facing today. The applications for this toolkit are just incredibly diverse and cutting-edge. Right now, researchers are using CA to study second language acquisition out in the wild, observing how people learn grammar not from boring textbooks, but as a real-time interactional resource. They're assessing interactional competence and improving language teaching in actual classrooms. They're even applying this to social justice issues. And what's especially fascinating to me is this recent push into artificial intelligence, which was highlighted by some 2025 research from Iguchi and colleagues on human-machine interaction. I mean, think about it. Are we using these exact same mechanical rules of turn-taking and hesitation when we talk to a chatbot or a voice assistant? CA actually gives us the precise tools to find out.
Finally, Section 6. Strategies for CA Research. How to apply the method today.
Now, for the researchers, educators, or just the highly curious learners in our audience, how do you actually go about actively using this method? Professor Rover recommends a very specific two-step strategy, and this is primarily to solve a pretty unique problem. Pure conversation analysis has no inherent theory of mind. Remember, it does not care about internal cognition. It only cares about what is visibly happening in the data. So step 1 is to conduct a purely descriptive analysis following those really strict CA empirical rules. You've got to build the mechanical foundation first. Then, step 2 is to apply an extraneous theory, like sociocultural theory or cognitive approaches, to actually discuss the mind, cognition, and how learning happens. You observe the machinery first, and only then do you interpret what it means.
Okay, but how do you know if your analysis of that machinery is actually right? Well, in a lot of academic fields, you'd use standard intercoder reliability tests, but instead, CA relies heavily on something called data sessions. This is where a group of researchers get together in a room, they pull up the raw transcript and the audio, and they vigorously debate their findings. Because every single claim has to be proven directly from the visible data, you don't even need a statistical reliability test. You just need to be able to point to the exact hesitation, the exact overlap, or the exact repair on the transcript and defend it to your peers. It is a brilliant, highly collaborative method for empirical self-improvement. Which brings us to our final slide, and a bit of a provocation for you. Knowing the mechanics of talk, the strong and weak adjacency pairs, those really loud silences, the rapid preferred responses, and the hesitant dispreferred ones, how will you analyze the why that now of your very next conversation? I guarantee, the next time a silence falls at a dinner party or a colleague hesitates with an before saying no, you won't just feel the awkwardness anymore. You'll actually see the hidden, intricate machinery of human interaction right there at work. Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer. And hey, keep observing the data all around you.